In an urban society, everything connects. Each person's needs are fed by the skills of many others. Our lives are woven together in a fabric. But the connections that make society strong also make it vulnerable.
It's going to be number one.
Excellent.
I guess
you know what? I didn't vote for this, and I'll tell you for why. Because you said to me, "Oh, Halloween horror." I was thinking about witches and goblins. I didn't think to vote for something that genuinely horrified me.
I think it was my number two, Dave. I think it was.
Yeah.
Mine was Rabies Means Death, which I can't watch. I can watch Threads if I build up to it, but I can't watch that. But yeah, it's apart from obviously the Rabies public information film, it remains the most terrifying thing I've ever seen in my life because of what we were talking about before, Dave. That thing of creeping under your skin.
Yeah.
That year, 1984, that was the year. I mean, we talk about this on the live shows. Bob had the same experience as me, but Bob Fisher, the third member of our group, our host, that he lived most of 1983 and 1984 believing he was going to die at some point, not if, when the world was going to explode in nuclear fire. And I had the same thing. I kind of resigned myself as a teenager to the idea that I would not live to see 1990 and just have to get on with it. And Threads arrived slap bang in the middle of that anxiety. I had my first panic attack when I was 13, lying awake in bed, thinking about nuclear war. And God knows how I made it through the entire show. But I'll never forget the next day in school because everyone in my class had watched it. And it was literally traumatized kids who were kind of thinking, will it happen? When will it happen? I mean, some of the images in that, and again, it grounds itself in reality. That's a world everyone can recognize. Just milk bottles and going down the newsagents and going down the pub. And the beauty of it is that the build-up to the war plays out in the background and no one's paying attention. There's kind of newspaper headlines. There's the news playing on televisions, but everyone's too busy having conversations about the romantic entanglements of Rhys Dinsdale and his girlfriend. But when it kicks off, it's just relentless. And it's the dispassionate voiceover and the calm statistics about what was going to happen. Never been anything like it.
And that, like the typing on the screen, where it's just like very factual. It's like nuclear strike on with the airplane when the fighters are taking off and just white out because they've gone now. And just think, because I was chatting to Rhys Dinsdale about Threads, and he told me, me and Rhys, he knows my name. me and Rhys I was chatting to Rhys, and he was telling me about how it was the most fun he'd ever had making a TV show. They'd never laughed so much in their lives, he said. But then he said afterwards, what we did was we showed it to everybody that was involved in the background, the ordinary people of Sheffield. And he said at the end, it absolutely could have had a pin drop. It was just like apart from the occasional sob.
Well, Simon as well. Remember we went to Birmingham?
Yes, we did. We
went to Birmingham. To a service station in Birmingham to meet. I can't remember. My brain's like porridge tonight. Simon is basically one of the kind of producers, kind of thing on Threads, and Nosy Bonk worked on Jigsaw as well. 2 horrors for the price of 1.
Yeah.
But he was telling some of the stories he was telling us about the making of Threads would it was almost like guerrilla filmmaking because there's a traffic jam scene in Sheffield city centre. They didn't get planning permission to go and drive a car through it. So basically, you have to have a spotter on a roof of a building with binoculars. I think he was in the car. He drove into a busy intersection, stopped in the middle of it to stop the traffic. And the guy with binoculars was going, "No, you're safe. There's no police. The police are coming. Put your foot on it." Kind of thing. We got enough footage. But he described how he had to it was the BBC drama department wouldn't touch it with a barge pole. So it was made by the science department. So everything had to be as scientifically correct and factually accurate as possible. So he was telling me and Dave this story about he researched what vomit and diarrhea would look like when under radiation sickness, day 1 to day 10. He said he had 5 bell jars, two lines. You had your vomit, day 1 of radiation sickness, it was chicken soup. By day 5, it's just bile. And the same with your diarrhea. It was just
it's grim.
Yeah.
That was the thing about it. It was just unrelentless,
Yeah.
unrelenting grimness.
So the final
There is a thing you can watch out for that might cheer you up. Again, this is something that Reece told me, sorry to drop the name again. But he'd gone for a haircut for his next job halfway through filming. And his next job was as an RAF pilot. So he had his hair, and he was halfway through having his haircut, and he realised he had to go back and shoot some scenes for Threads. So for the second half of his appearance, he's only seen from one side. So watch out for that.
A surprise, yeah. I mean, it terrified the generation, didn't it? Having said, I don't get scared by stuff. This scared me shit, to be honest, at the time. And it was as it was supposed to. It was just I can remember quite clearly watching. It was a Wednesday night or something like that, Thursday night it was on, and we'd had, I think, the day after, which was a slightly Americanized nuclear war, and then this came along, which was like, I thought it's really going to be like then. Okay, it was just terror. It was just, I remember feeling my stomach sort of falling away watching it, as because it was done in a sort of a documentary style, with this is how the authorities would cope with this, and then you'd have the sort of soap opera dynamics of the families, and then going back to the government trying to cope with it in their bunkers and things, and the bombs going off, and it was just sickening. It was genuinely sickening, and again, a bit like the war game, because this was something that could happen, because the capability for this was there out in the world. This could happen at any time, and I think there'd even been a couple of close calls, even by the time we saw Threads. But of course, when it actually happens, then you get those horrible scenes of everything blowing up and people disintegrating and these shriveled. I remember the one scene of shriveled corpses, burnt up corpses, and I think there's one of a cat struggling to stand up. I don't know how they did some of this stuff, and it just made you feel sick to your stomach. And I remember watching, when it finished, I thought, that is absolutely brilliant. I don't know if I could ever watch that again. And I've got it on DVD. I must get around to find the new Blu-ray. And I don't know if I can watch it again now, to be honest. I don't think I've ever sat and watched it all the way through. I watched bits of it, clips of it. Sometimes I've even, because it's just such a, the whole thing is this whole package of, raw, visceral, real horror of something, not a monster or an alien, but it's something that the world could do. People can make this happen. It's not, like I say, monsters are all fictional. You can sort of say, well, that's not real, but this was real. This was the whole point of this, was saying this is what will happen if there's a nuclear war, and that was just terrifying, because it was done in that verite style, if you like. It was almost like fly on the wall, and of course, as you say, the fact that we didn't know these actors, it wasn't a case of there's so and so from Z Cars or so and so from Upstairs Downstairs. You didn't recognise these people. They weren't household names. They hadn't been in a soap opera. That added to the reality of it. That added to the documentary feel. You genuinely felt as if you were in these people's houses. And of course, it was all on film, which made a difference as well, because at the time, a lot of drama was that mix of videotape and film, which was always quite jarring. But this just looked like a window on this horrible real world that you just didn't want to happen, but sort of feared could, especially at that time as well, because we were in the middle of the Cold War, and this could have happened at any time. And it made it all the worse. But the visuals, so considering it was quite a low budget thing, the visuals were incredible. Not just the bomb going off, but all the post-apocalyptic stuff with this bleak, horrible, grey, airless, lightless world that was in perpetual winter, and it was just really, really hard work watching it. But it's, and you say, it's just sort of cautionary viewing, but it's very hard to recommend it to people because it is so bleak. There's no light or shade in it. It's just, this is the end of the world. So this is what could happen, and that's what makes it so terrifying.
My favourite film at that time was Mad Max 2, because that's what I was going to do after the world ended, which I was convinced was going to happen possibly next month. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I was going to survive it and ride around in my dad's, whatever it was, Marina or whatever it was. Anyway, suffice to say, Threads, the two disturbing bits about Threads were where the woman wet herself in Sheffield. I remember seeing that, and you see that she's so scared on telly, she urinates. And that was disturbing. It was the fact that this is just an ordinary woman, and she's seen a mushroom cloud in real world Britain. It just absolutely was quite shocking. And it was then, I think it was the fact it was so grim afterwards. There was the guys in the shelter. That's the shelter where my dad would have been. They were screwed as well. They ended up slowly they're like, they were in control, and then they slowly lost control, and then the power was out in there, and then you realize they were absolutely useless as well. And then you went forward a few decades, if I remember rightly, and there was nuclear winter, and then by the end there was a baby born in what was just like this whiteout of snowy, horrendous. It was a true sort of Beksinski nightmare. It was absolutely. I've never forgotten it. My brother-in-law bought it and said to me about last year, "Oh, Neil, my partner's not seen this. Should we go and have a Threads party?" I went, "A Threads party? You're kidding? A Threads party?" I said, "No, I don't like folk music, but I'll have an evening of that rather than a Threads party." So no. Threads party. Wow. And I've had it in my hand on DVD several times to buy. And then I thought, what are you doing? There's no joy in this. This DVD contains zero joy. That's not saying it's not good. It is. But I have no desire to relive it again.
Obviously, if that was filmed today, I don't know how to clean this up, Dave, but you've got a guy on the toilet just as the blast happens. Not his, the one outside. And you've got an old lady there that obviously has, something's running down her leg through fear, and it wasn't sweat. But yeah, I don't think today we would portray fear in that sort of way, to that sort of depth. So
you think it'd be sanitised?
Yeah, of course it would be. Yeah, and obviously then it was a no holds barred release. It was how things how they perceived it, and I don't think they were going to have any other way. So yeah, a great. I think the thing that I like about Threads more than anything is that they've not held back.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's a no holds barred. Is it a documentary? No.
Docudrama.
It's a docudrama. Yeah, great word. Of what could happen. And if you haven't seen it, please do watch it. It's terrifying.
But I do think that, it was said that Reagan watched it. Now, if that's true, certainly a lot of the top UK politicians at the time watched it too. For a film like that, a TV film, to get through to those people who were basically in charge of the nuclear arsenals, I think it's got to be one of the most important films of all time, surely.
Absolutely. That's the legend, isn't it? That it changed his mind about nuclear war. And if that is true, it's possibly the most important film that's ever been made.
Yeah.
It's beyond entertainment. And that changed the president's mind about what would happen in a nuclear war. Personally, I think it's not only the best single drama Britain's ever produced, but like you say, it might just be the most important as well.
One of the documents that Simon showed us at this meeting was a letter that the production crew got from Neil Kinnock, thanking them for the work they'd done in highlighting the real, very real dangers of nuclear war. So that was interesting to see.
Yeah,
I think there's been a trio really of BBC dramas that probably were powerful enough to change how people think. They had a social change. One, I think, is Threads. Another is Boys from the Black Stuff. And another is Kathy Come Home.
Yeah.
Yes, but yeah, going back to Threads for a second, I lived just up the road from Port Sunlight, where the Unilever factory is. And at 8:45 every morning, Unilever would sound an air raid siren to announce that the workday was starting. So I faced nuclear Armageddon at 8:45 every single morning of my teenage life. Just fun.
No. Very, very scary, but effective programme. And it's no wonder that our panels voted it in at number one.